Hello, LitFilmFest critters, and welcome to LitFilmFest Live. I'm Tim, and we are here to talk about some interesting classroom topics with authors, all from the comfort of our own home. And we have 10 free giveaway books tonight. Just follow all of the instructions down below to find out how you could be a lucky winner. And we are joined today by the author, Teresa Power. Hi, Teresa. How are you doing, Teresa?
Good, Tim. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. What are you drinking? I'm on coffee.
I'm drinking some water. I've already had 2 cups of coffee, so I'm drinking water now.
I've told top teacher tip is to have a glass of water between cups of coffee because it just stops all the straining on the vocal cords. But my little one kept me up all night, so I'm on the coffee tonight, I'm afraid.
Oh, now how old is your little one?
He's 2 months, so
it's very early. Congratulations!
Very early days. Very impressive. I'm staying up awake this late, 8 o'clock. Great. We're going to be discussing mental health tonight and yoga and mindfulness for our classes' mental health, and actively supporting them through yoga and fiction, which is your speciality, Teresa, isn't it? Yoga and fiction and mixing them together. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I have practiced yoga for over 30 years. And actually, I started practicing yoga when I was in law school. And then when I had my kids, I decided I didn't want to practice law anymore. So I became a certified yoga teacher. And eventually, I started teaching yoga to kids. So my first book is the ABCs of Yoga for Kids. It's an alphabet dictionary of yoga poses for kids. And after that, I had so much fun with that I also have flashcards and all kinds of things with that. But then I decided that I wanted to do something different. I wanted, like Tim said, to bring fiction into with yoga, which no one has done before. So today we're going to be talking about Yoga at the Zoo, which is a fiction story that incorporates yoga in it. And this is one of the books. So we're giving away 5 copies of these books. And we're also giving away 5 copies of the original book, which is the ABCs of Yoga for Kids. So I'm really excited to share with you my love of yoga and talk about my new book.
Great. And why did you decide to aim it at younger children? Was that something you had experience of, or do you think the message was taught more readily at a younger age? What went through your head?
Well, the reason why I started with younger kids is, first of all, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a preschool teacher. Okay, I loved working with young kids, and I'm a very orderly person. I'm good at explaining things. I'm a very good teacher. So when my son was in preschool, I went to Career Day and told them I was a yoga teacher and was giving them some sample moves, and they loved it. So I ended up teaching preschoolers and then eventually kindergarten through 4th graders yoga. And at that time, this was back in 1998. So there were not a lot of yoga books for kids on the market. So that's why I came up with this whole idea of a yoga dictionary for kids. All right. So basically kids could learn the alphabet, young kids, and yoga at the same time. So all the poses in this original book were tested on kids because I tried them out on them. Right. So for instance, I'll just give you a little example of kind of some so the whole company pose describe how to do it. So that's originally what I decided to do is and then I found I was very good with kids, and I still love working with kids. They're very open and eager and receptive to new ideas and concepts, and to them yoga, you know, they don't even think about it as yoga. They're just having fun doing these moves. So
and it's not too different from being an attorney, really, is it? A teacher?
I guess. I mean, listen, I'm such a creative person, and we talked about earlier before, and I'm such an entrepreneur, and I love creating, and the law was just a little bit dry for me. I mean, I prefer what I'm doing now. I like sharing my passion for something, and I am very passionate about yoga. Like I said, I've been practicing myself for 30 years, and I'm still practicing. I practice every day, and I've noticed a huge change in my own, demeanor and personality and the way I handle things from the yoga.
Absolutely. We just had a comment on Facebook just saying how they like to practice mental health in the classroom or support it is to just listen to what the children are saying. And I think that's quite good advice, isn't it? Making sure that we feel comfortable to talk and to listen to each other. And I think as teachers, we have to be good at that. So yoga and and teaching go quite hand in hand, I think, in terms of looking after our children and, you know, and how they're feeling. And
Yes, exactly. Oh, and that's so important. And I'm glad that someone brought that up because I was actually in a classroom setting teaching the kids, right? And so a lot of teaching does go along with it. But a lot of times you do listen to the kids because I'll just share a little story. This one little boy I'll never forget. I always had the kids sit in a circle and we do the poses together. And one little boy just never wanted to participate. So I listened to him and I said, okay, if you don't want to participate, just please don't disrupt everyone else, but you can just sit quietly. And he did. And literally 2 weeks later, the mom called me and said, oh my goodness, my son is practicing all these poses at home. So he was paying attention in the class, but he just didn't want to participate. So that's fine. You know, it's not something you want to force kids. And I always say too, when you're in schools, it's really important for kids to do yoga in school. And that's why I created this kind of book and this curriculum that I have. I have little flashcards that, you know, go with it. Because you listen to the kids' bodies, like never adjust them in the pose, just let them spontaneously, like in it, you know, they don't have to do the perfect pose. It's just getting used to their bodies and feeling their bodies in the poses.
And like all of this language that we're talking about can sound quite vulnerable as well, I think. So it does shut a lot of children off initially, I would say, is, you know, being able to take a moment and calm and think about how you're feeling. All of these are quite vulnerable, put children in vulnerable places. And that's important to exercise rather than just shun away, I think, your whole life. So it's good to tackle these thoughts and feelings head on in order to create a more balanced adult growing up who understands themselves, I think. So
I agree
sometimes
100%.
you do feel different, don't you?
Yes, and the thing is, but what I try to do is not make them, because it is a vulnerability, but they don't know, especially the younger kids. Because I mean,
Yeah.
I teach 3 to 8-year-olds is what these books are geared towards, but I've taught older kids than that, teenagers and adults and even older people. But for the young kids, it's almost like they're becoming vulnerable, but they don't realize it. Okay, so and they're doing the poses, and I always tell them it's non-competitive. Yoga is very non-competitive. You know, you don't have to worry about what your neighbor's doing. And I love the fact that I tell them that, and I tell them, look, some kids are very flexible, others aren't. We're all bodies are different, and let's celebrate the kid that can do thing, you know, with their legs straight, and let's celebrate the child that can't. You know, it's more we're supporting each other.
Fantastic. Well, now we're going to move on to Kids Corner. That's the Kids Corner part of our interview, Teresa, where we're going to dive into some of your books here. We're going to take a reading, if that's okay, if you've got one ready.
Yes, I do.
And so all of you at home now can use this section straight in the classroom tomorrow. This video will be up on YouTube and Facebook live. And also we'll be chopping it up and releasing it on the website, litfilmfest.com, as an actual resource that you can use to understand a text and understand the book better in your classroom with your children. So look out for that. Okay, Teresa, over to you.
Okay, so I will tell you a little brief synopsis about the book too, because I don't know, Tim, if we have time to read the whole book or not. But it's called Little Mouse Adventures. It's a series of books, and the first one is Yoga at the Zoo. Now, if you guys can see this, the little mouse is seeing the giraffe for the first time with his best friend, the cat. So basically, I'll just start at the beginning so you can kind of understand what the book's about. So it says here, Little Mouse lives with his family in a cozy burrow tucked beneath the roots of an old oak tree. And by the way, the illustrations are by Emma Allen, who's from London, England. Every morning he goes to school and discovers the answers to his many questions. So Little Mouse is very curious. Now, I relate very well to Little Mouse because he's curious and he's active, and he really needs the yoga to calm down. So I don't know, are you guys curious and active like Little Mouse? Or maybe you're like his best friend, Mr. Opus. So every afternoon, Little Mouse goes over to the house next door where his best friend, Mr. Opus, lives. Now, Mr. Opus is a cat. Mr. Opus is Tammy McDoodle's cat. He lives with Tammy and her mom and dad. So basically, also, I wrote the book so that you kids can see that cats and mice are not normally best friends, are they? I mean, no, but it's fun to see that they can be best friends, that you can be friends with people you never thought you could be friends with, right? And here, sometimes Tammy does yoga with her mom. Mr. Opus likes child's pose best. So kids, you can think about, are you more like a mouse that scurries around and is very active and wants to know everything? Or are you more like Mr. Opus the cat, who's kind of lazy, quiet, just likes to sedentary and not move around as much? So it's kind of interesting. Now, I'm personally more like Little Mouse, and that's why I like the yoga. So the way that they go, and I'm not sure, Tim, how much time I have, but what happens in the story is that Tammy tells her mother that the class is going on a field trip to the zoo. So Little Mouse and Mr. Opus decide that they're going to go along. But the story is, and this is what you'll find out, is that Tammy does not know that Little Mouse and Mr. Opus are stowing away on all these different adventures. So they are stowing away. Can you kids see them? So they stowed away on the school bus, and now they're going to the zoo. And they're going to meet different animals, and they're going to learn yoga poses. So Little Mouse meets Ned the giraffe, right? And he learns how to stretch his neck. So you can stretch your neck really high. So Ned the giraffe teaches him how to stretch his neck really high. And then Little Mouse skimpers along and meets the flamingos. And he actually meets a flamingo named Rosita. And look, Rosita teaches him how to stand on one leg. It's called the flamingo pose. Now, this is very important for you kids in school, is to learn how to balance on one leg. It helps you to concentrate and focus and to breathe. You breathe while you're in the poses. Now, then he meets an elephant, right? And there's an elephant pose. So the elephant is scared of the mouse, right? But they become friends. So can you see them becoming friends? Look, they shake trunks. So then I'll show you my favorite picture in the whole book is this one. Can you see it? Look, can you find Little Mouse? It's even hard to see him on this page, but I love the way Emma Allen illustrated this with all the cages and the animals in it. And look at Little Mouse running up to the lion, thinking the lion's a cat. Okay, so he's running up expecting to be friends with the lion. Now, do you know what's going to happen? Well, wow. Roar! Oh boy, Little Mouse gets really scared because the lion's roaring at him. So can you see what he's doing? He's getting into child's pose and quieting his mind. What do you guys think is going to happen next? Well, look at that. The Little Mouse asks the lion, do you know yoga? And the lion says yes. He said he was scared because Little Mouse came into his cage, but they became friends. And so at the end, they say goodbye to each other. And then the end is Little Mouse is getting ready for his next adventures. Now, I want you all to know that there's a bunch of new adventures coming up with Little Mouse. The one that just came out recently is Mindfulness at the Park, where Little Mouse learns about mindfulness. And next spring, we're going to look forward to more adventures with Little Mouse at the museum, where he learns yoga at the museum. So that's kind of a little synopsis of it. I didn't read the whole story, but I kind of gave you guys a clue as to it. And I hope you guys enjoy it. It's a very fun way to learn about yoga and friendship and emotions all at the same time.
Oh, that was lovely. I feel so relaxed. I feel like the book is written and illustrated to be relaxing. Was that something that you did with that in mind?
Yes, we did. As a matter of fact, I did because it is about yoga, but it's a subtle way to do it, right? So yes, it is supposed to be relaxing, and the illustrations are just so old-fashioned. I love the book because it's old-fashioned, and in this day and age, we need to get back to our roots. You know, there's so much technology, there's so much going on in the world with the coronavirus and everything else that we really need to just find our centers and to find books and rediscover that literature reading and enjoying story and learning lessons from it.
Yeah, because modern media is so in your face, action packed, not a minute's rest, is it? So it's refreshing to have a page, one of the last pages, I think, in your book that just had 4 words. It was tranquil, peaceful, calm. Just on that, just to reflect upon what that means at the end of the story, and that made me calm as the reader, which was nice. I could see that impact that you had.
Oh, good. Well, thank you for that input. Yeah. Well, that was what we wanted to do, so I'm glad it works.
Yes, I'm a good interviewer.
You are. You're the best interviewer.
Oh, thank you. I'll ask you a few questions now about your book, if that's okay. And again, we'll be asking the children at home and in the classes some of these based on the text that we've just been through. So can you give us a short synopsis, that's a summary of the book?
Yes. So basically, the book is about a little mouse and his best friend, Mr. Opus the cat. Now, little mouse lives in the trunk of a tree that is on the property of the McDoodle family, and Mr. Opus is Tammy McDoodle's cat. So basically, the cat and the mouse, little mouse, goes over all the time to visit with Mr. Opus, and they see Tammy and her mother doing yoga. And so they get excited about doing yoga in the corner. And Tammy does not know that they're there in the corner doing it along with her. And so when they decide Tammy's class goes to the zoo, guess what? Little Mouse and Mr. Opus stow away. And they meet the giraffe, they meet an elephant, they meet a lion, and kids can learn about those different poses. Yes, and they can learn about the poses, and they can also learn about new friendships and new emotions, like when Little Mouse got scared of the lion, but he used his yoga to calm his mind, and it ended up that the lion knew yoga too. So it's a bit of a fiction story, but it imparts important lessons about friendship, emotions, and yoga.
Lovely. Who was your favorite character and why?
Okay, so I alluded. Yeah, I alluded to it.
Mine
yeah,
was.
I alluded to it when I was reading the story. Is that Little Mouse was really, and you know who Little Mouse is actually based on is, I don't know if you guys remember the Curious George books, which were my favorite when I was a little girl and when my kids were little. And so I wanted something like that, where Little Mouse is curious about everything, and I'm very curious about everything. And I have a lot of energy, right? I mean, I am high energy. And if I didn't have that yoga to calm me down, who knows? I mean, what I would be like, you know? So I'm still high energy, but I have that yoga to draw my energy back into the center. And that's what Little Mouse does too. So Little Mouse reminds me of me.
We used to have drama classes, as part early days of LitFilmFest and what we were doing really. And one activity that we had to do was pretend to be an animal. And this is a good drama activity and a good writing activity. So if you were to be part man, part snake, how would you move? So you do that 100%. You act out as a snake on the floor. And then you actually say, well, if I was 10% of a snake, how would I act? And how would I speak? So you have 90% human and 5% snake. And suddenly it becomes much more believable as a character. And often we do liken ourselves to animals. Like I'm like a mouse. I'm similar actually. I am like a busy mouse, smiley, happy, busy mouse. And I can imagine writing myself as that character. But it's good to act out the character sometimes before we write them as well, which is what that pairs hand in hand. It just made me think of it when you were talking about.
Wow. It. Yeah, no, that's so interesting. I love that. I mean, that's so interesting. And I did kind of think about that, as a matter of fact, to a degree, you know, so I'm glad that you shared that. That's very interesting.
Okay, next question. What is a highlight of the book that you think children will really enjoy?
Well, I think they're going to enjoy the fact that when the lion roars at Little Mouse, because it's scary, you know, and then kids are going to want to know what happens next. That's kind of part of writing a fiction book, is to have that kind of climax point in the book. And then I think they'll really enjoy the fact that they become friends and that the lion knew yoga. I mean, my favorite line in the book is Little Mouse looks at the lion and says, "You know yoga," you know. So so I think kids will get a kick out of that and laugh, because like I said, you know, Emma Allen, the illustrator, has she's got amazingly calming but also whimsical illustrations, and there's some humor in the book a little bit, so kids can laugh at the same time, because you know, yoga for kids is not meant to be really serious. You know, in adult class you're going to be very quiet, you know, it's a little more somber, you know, but with kids they can act out, they can make noises, they can have fun. There's a lion pose, you roar really loud actually, so that's what's kind of fun. And in the cat pose, I have kids do the cat pose and meow like cats. In fact, here, I have a little flashcard, C is for cat. Can you see that? So I have the kids see they're kicking out their tail, and I have them say, meow, meow. You know, it's a little bit less formal with children than it is with adults.
Gets you into the mindset then, doesn't it? Particularly for early ages, they're very good at play. So to play out something that will support their mental health and help them reflect is quite powerful, I think.
Yes, it is. You're right. And it is about play. I've done a lot of workshops on the power of play with yoga. So yes, and then kids learn through play. That's how they, especially those toddlers, and they have a lot of energy. So let them roar like a lion or meow like a
Mm,
cat or bark like a dog, and then center them again into their breathing. So you're going to let them dispel the energy, but then bring it back to their breath and calm them down again.
absolutely. And what do you hope that children will take away from reading your book? What will they? What do you want them to? The message to stick in their heads?
Well, I want them, first of all, to fall in love with Little Mouse and realize that they can be friends with people they never thought they could be friends with, because, a cat and a mouse are not normally best friends, right? So that's why I wrote it that way, so that, kids can have that opportunity to explore other friendships. And the fact that the little mouse becomes friends with the flamingo, with the elephant, and the elephant initially was scared of the mouse. So I think that's one important point that I want kids to realize, is that you can be friends with all kinds of people. And the second thing is that I want them to get excited about doing some simple yoga poses and learn how to calm their minds and bodies, just in a really simple way, not anything too complicated, but just to try some of these poses on their own, and to focus on their breath to calm themselves down.
Great. Don't forget, everyone, that there is a giveaway today as well. So we've got 10 books to give away. Just comment underneath how you have seen mental health work in your classroom or schools, and like this video, and we will read out some of those comments live on this show. You use a really interesting mix of fiction and non-fiction, or faction. I've actually heard it called before in the past. Why did you choose that? Why did you choose that method?
Well, I chose it because, like, I showed you guys earlier, my initial book that I wrote was a nonfiction book. It was just basically a book about yoga poses, and with little poems explaining how to do them. But and so a lot of the market now is flooded with those kind of books, but no one has written a fiction book. And I find that kids learn better with fiction stories. They love the story. And so they're going to learn more and pay attention than if it's just nonfiction. And that's where I think that's the beauty of it. And that's why I decided that to do a yoga book that actually, because yoga is more than just the postures. Okay. So yes, that's one aspect of it, is to do like the mouse pose or the cat pose, but there's a lot more to it. It's just about your mindset, your behavior, your breathing, your calm, you're just a better person. You have good manners. I mean, there's so many aspects that are yoga. And so I'm trying to inspire kids about that in a fiction way, so that I'm not preaching to them. They're learning it on their own.
Yeah, good point. We just had a comment come up. It says, the Breathe unit from LitFilmFest. Oh, I didn't write this, honestly. Would do so well for this. We actually have created a resource around this, around mental health. Kids who initially worried about being vulnerable very soon get on board and benefit from mindfulness and yoga. Thank you, user, for sending that in.
Yeah,
and that's probably to do with practice. That's probably to do with practice, isn't it? I think, Teresa, getting used to being vulnerable in that way, and practicing yoga or mindfulness, and in order to see the benefit of it, just takes time.
Well, and that's what I tell kids, is that they have plenty of time, because that's why it's called a yoga practice. We don't have to be perfect at it ever. It's just a practice.
Absolutely.
And I have been practicing for over 30 years, and I'm still certain things I just can't do. Maybe my body never will be able to do it, but that's fine. So it's always, but you keep on doing it. That's why I tell the kids, like in the tree pose, for instance, right? Oh, I think I've got here, no, I'll show you. So like I've got the flamingo pose here that was in the book. Remember the flamingo? So this is hard for little kids to balance on one leg like that. So I tell them, don't worry about it. The first time you do it, you're going to have to hold on to a chair. You're going to have to, hold on to somebody else. But eventually, the more that you practice it, the better you get. And then that builds your confidence, because the kids get so excited after like a month of me teaching them. All of a sudden I go, wow, Mrs. Power, look, I can do this now, and it's so exciting, to see them.
Some children struggle to stand on two legs, don't they? So
yeah, exactly. Why? I always say repetition is the mother of skill. So the more you do something, the better you get it, no matter what, whether it's yoga or whatever you want to do.
Absolutely. And that leads us on to the next question, really, of why is this book important at this time of our lives? A time where children really need to think about their mental health and moments of calm? Why do you see this book as being really vital at this time?
Oh, I think it's so vitally important right now for kids to be exposed to, first of all, friendships, and realize that they, because there's a lot of division in our country right now, and so the fact that you can be friends with all kinds of people, right, and be caring, empathetic people. So that's one thing that's very important for kids to do right now, and also to learn how to use yoga and mindfulness to calm their minds and bodies, because that with the coronavirus going on and all these things, that the world is just changing a lot, and there's a lot of technology. It's very fast paced. For kids to learn to breathe and slow down. I mean, I always say we're going to change the world one pose at a time, but it's really important for kids, no matter where they are, all over the world. I mean, and also you and I had talked about it earlier, is that young kids are the leaders of tomorrow. So if we can get our youth on board, taking care of themselves mentally, right, to be able to learn how to self-regulate, because yoga teaches them how to self-regulate their bodies, right, and to feel good about themselves, and to feel confident, to feel focused, and it's going to be, they're going to be better leaders in the future, and they're going to be, better students. It's just so essential right now with all that's going around, that we can just, if we can keep our little corner, of the world in ourselves, not stressed and calm, we're going to do a lot of good things for the world.
I think that's really important, particularly when there's so many restrictions that have gone into education and home. So in the UK at the minute, Teresa, I'm not sure if you know, but we're only allowed to meet 6 people at a time. That's our latest restriction that went down this week. And this is ever changing, different conditions. People talking about Christmas being effectively cancelled in this country because we're not sure if we're going to go into a second wave soon. Social distancing in school, so people, kids can't even see their friends up close like they'd want to normally. So to have something to reflect and stay calm, with these ever-changing moments and events is really important. So I think it's a really solid message that we're trying to promote here.
And yes, and it is global, because you're saying that's happening in London. Well, in Los Angeles, we are still like basically behind everyone else. We're still basically on lockdown. A lot of things are not open yet, and 6 people are allowed to go out. We're allowed to eat outside, 6 people at a time, and we don't know about Halloween. We don't know about Christmas. So it's a very uncertain. Everything is uncertain right now, and it's scary for kids. It's scary for adults. But instead, if we can just learn to really ground ourselves, and to just to be centered, calm whenever we're getting overwhelmed, just to take that deep breath in through your nose, and then you just exhale through your nose. It just kind of changes, it just shifts a little bit, I mean, because we can't control the world, but we can control ourselves and our views of things.
That's a lovely message to keep. Can't control the world, but we can control ourselves. I love that. Right, we're going to go into the final section now, where we start to discuss the text a little bit more, if that's okay, Teresa. And again, this part of the interview I'll be chopping up and editing, so you can use it in the classroom as a resource in the future on litfilmfest.com. Don't forget to like the video and also comment underneath with any ideas of how you can use mental health practices in your school or classroom, and you could be in with a chance to win one of the 10 copies of Teresa's books, which is with the fantastic and very useful as a tool to teach yoga.
Yes, and I'd like to say thank my publisher, Stafford House Books, for allowing us to be able to give away those copies. So
yeah, they've been very good, very good. Thank you. So can you explain what yoga is? Okay, Teresa, you can answer that now.
Okay, you want me to answer? Okay, so basically yoga, I tell kids especially, all it is a combination of breath and movement. That's really the basis of it. And it's been around for 5,000 years, and it was originated in India. But basically, it's a way to integrate your breath and move your body at the same time. So for instance, if you are doing that flamingo pose that we talked about, you're going to be inhaling and exhaling with your breath. So the main thing is with the breath, you don't want to do shallow breathing, like go like that, because that is going to make you more agitated, and it's going to tire you out. Instead, in yoga, that's why it's different. Like, people say, oh, yoga is just like Indian calisthenics or something, because people think that yoga is like, contorting your body into these different things, but it's not really. It's about, because that's not a contortion. And here, the elephant pose here, that's not a contortion. It's just something kids can do. And this is a great stretch for your hamstrings, just to fold forward like an elephant. But the main thing is to use your breath. So you're breathing slowly. So even I tell kids, inhale for the count of 5. And then exhale for the count of 5 while you're in the poses. So that's really what it is. And it's much more complicated than that. But on the simplest level, it's different than other forms of exercise because of that breath component and the fact that you're learning how to calm your minds and bodies in the poses.
Lovely. We just had another comment. Someone has had to leave the live show, but they've been enjoying it. They said they've got to do bedtime with the kids, but reminded them of the importance of breathing. Maybe take a big deep breath just before
the kids go to bed. Well, I'm glad they're going to bed early. I used to send my kids to bed early all the time. It's important for them to get their sleep at that age.
Absolutely. Okay, so next question. What do you want the readers to think about the story from the front cover? What do you want them to take?
Okay, so here's the front cover. So basically what I want them to take away is a curiosity to find out what that's all about, because, yoga at the zoo. So obviously there's a giraffe there and they see a little mouse and a cat. And it seems like the giraffe and the cat are friendly with each other. But I think kids are going to be intrigued to want to find out, well, what does that mean? How are we going to do yoga at the zoo? So I think that what I want them to do is the cover. I want it to enhance them or to excite them to want to open the book and figure out how in the world is this giraffe and this cat and this mouse going to do yoga. So it's more like an enticement for the story to get kids excited to open up the book and see what's going to happen. Lovely.
You've got some nice levels there with the animals as well, haven't you? So it goes mouse, cat, giraffe, really big. So real variety of sizes and animals on the front cover. So yeah, it definitely gets you engaged, doesn't it, and intrigued. Do you want to pick one of your favorite pictures in the book and just explain what's happening in that picture?
Yes.
You've done a little bit today. Nice to do it in detail.
Well, this one is my favorite one. I don't know if you guys can see it. I guess I'll get out of the way. But this is my favorite one. I love the all the cages because kids can get excited about going to the zoo. Plus, another thing too about this book I want kids to do is get excited about going to the zoo and seeing all the animals. So I love the way that, and I love the way that you can barely see little mouse. It reminds me of, I don't know if you guys remember the Where's Waldo books, which I used to love too, but it's almost like, where's little mouse? He's so small in the grand scheme of things. And also I absolutely love the lion cage and little mouse creeping up to it because he thinks that the lion is a cat. So I just love that illustration. And it's just so pretty and whimsical and makes me want to go to the zoo. So that's another thing too, is just, and there's many more animals at the zoo as well, that kids could, explore besides the ones that I chose for this book. Oh, and by the way, I did not do it, but I'm going to be adding some extra illustrations of Tammy McDoodle doing these poses, right? And Emma Allen's going to illustrate them for me, and we're going to put them on the website because unfortunately in this book at the end, we don't have any illustrations of how to do these poses. So that's the only thing that I regret not putting into the book. But sometimes when you're an author, it's an after thought. You don't realize it at the time, but just thought I'd throw that out there, that we will have poses of Tammy McDoodle showing you how to do the poses.
That's nice. And it's a starting point, and that's what you want for kids that age anyway, isn't it? So you want them to engage with the story and engage with that. So what sort of character is Little Mouse your favorite character? Are they mean or friendly or nice? And what in the book shows that? Can you find me any evidence for what they're like as a character?
Okay, so obviously Little Mouse is very friendly. I mean, he's obviously, because he's friendly with a cat, and you can see, I'll show you how that is, because for instance, he says, here, look at him. He says, I'm going to read this to you. He says, because he had asked Ned the giraffe on the opposite page, how does he stretch and eat all those leaves? So it's easy, says Ned. I just stretch my neck like this. Little Mouse stretches his neck too. Thanks, Ned, See, so he thanked the giraffe for teaching him how to stretch his neck and how to do that. And so little mouse is excited, and he has really good manners. He says thank you. But he's scampering along, he's curious. And also, here's another thing, very subtle, but a lot of kids this day and age, some of them maybe have ADD, or they just have trouble focusing, and attention. A lot of 3-year-olds just have trouble focusing, so that's what the 3-year-old does, and so they can kind of relate to little mouse wanting to jump around and do all this stuff. But they can also learn from little mouse that there is a way to quiet their minds and bodies, and it's okay to scamper around and to have a lot of energy, but it's also okay to be quiet and channel that energy as well. So you can be both.
Great. Were there any big surprises that you included in the story to maybe throw children off their expectation?
Well, I think we've talked about this earlier. The big surprise was when the lion. So the little mouse assumes that the lion, although it's kind of obvious that the lion's probably going to roar at him, but I don't think that the kids thought little mouse would actually go up to the lion's cage and want to say hi, and didn't expect him to roar. So see, here's the, let me just find the page here. So this was kind of, something that maybe the kids didn't expect, that the lion was going to roar. And then maybe they didn't expect that the lion and little mouse would become best friends either at the end. So that's something that they would not expect.
Can you describe where the story takes place?
Well, the story takes place obviously at a zoo, but it also takes place, the main action is at the little burrow where little mouse lives, at the base of an old oak tree, and at Tammy McDoodle's house. Now, I'm feeling like it takes place in London only because my illustrator is from London, right? And it feels like, I don't know, it feels like it's in the countryside or something. It's, like I said, it's very old fashioned, but this particularly adventure takes place at the museum. And as a little teaser, the new one here, Mindfulness at the Park, takes place obviously at a park where little mouse learns with the McDoodle family how to calm his mind and body.
It reminded me of like Victorian, the cages were quite Victorian in style. Reminded me of Kew Garden, if you've heard of Kew Gardens, which is a beautiful park.
Yes, I have. Yes, it does. And that's what, and I think that's probably from my illustrator, because she is from London. So that could be the basis for it. But I love that. And also I really wanted an old fashioned book. I mean, when my kids are now 25 and 27, but when I was raising them, the world was a little slower paced, right? And Facebook just became a thing when my daughter was in 9th grade. But they were kind of raised, somewhat as old fashioned as you can make it. But nothing is old fashioned in this world anymore. And I think we need to get back to some of those old fashioned values. Yes, we need to, we're going to always need technology. This is great that we're having the technology we're having right now for you and I to have this conversation. Some amazing things with technology, but we also have to guard ourselves against it and really, get back to reading books and to quieting our minds and bodies and being together as a family. Also, I love my book because it's something parents can bond with their children. They can read it together. I mean, how great is that to spend some quality time with your parents? I used to love to read to my kids when they were little.
We built this busy life, haven't we? Out of convenience, out of pleasure. But you're right, we need to learn how to deal with such a fast pace and media all the time and images and, everything's timed, isn't it? So to actually schedule some slower pace, more traditional reading or activities or family time is just really important. But it has to be relearned, doesn't it, for the future generation's sake?
Well, it does. It has to be relearned. And that's what I feel like I want to help do that. So, and I love what you said, traditional values. You know what I mean? I said old fashioned, but I like traditional. I like what you used a lot. That's a great word for it. It is traditional values. So I like that.
Last question of the night. Who is telling the story?
Well, the narrator is telling the story. Okay, it's not the voice of Little Mouse. It's not particularly of Mr. Opus. I think it's just a narrator, whoever it is. Maybe it's me. I mean, I don't know. It's like an adult kind of telling the story of what Little Mouse is doing. How's that?
Great. Thank you so very much for joining us tonight. I think tonight is actually your afternoon, isn't it?
Yeah, it is my afternoon. It's 12:30. It's lunchtime for me.
It's definitely bedtime for me. Well, yeah, it's been lovely to have you on. Thank you so much for joining us, and also check out all of Teresa's books. Would you like to give us one last plug of the books that you have released and what is up and coming?
Oh yes. Okay. So this one just came out on September 1st, Mindfulness at the Park. And the Yoga at the Zoo is the one we were talking about, and that was released in March. And you can find more about these books, as well as obviously my original book, The ABCs of Yoga for Kids. You can go to my publisher's website, which is staffordhousebooks.com. And you can also go to my website, which is abcyogaforkids.com. So it's abcyogaforkids.com. You can find out all about all my books. I've written 11 books. I've got all kinds of other books and resources for parents, for schools, for teachers. And you can just find more about yoga for kids on that website. So I really enjoyed it. Thank you, Tim, for inviting me, and get some sleep tonight for your 2-month-old tomorrow morning. And I just had a lot of fun sharing. You know, you can tell I'm very enthusiastic about this, but I think it's just really important. I just feel passionate about it. So thank you.
Yeah, it is. Thanks for joining us. Stay safe.
Okay, you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Right, so also don't forget to enter our competition to win one of Teresa's books. Like the video below and comment underneath with the positive mental health practices that you've seen work at your school and in your class. T's and C's apply, and the competition is going to be live for 1 week. And winners will be announced in next week's LitFilmFest live video, where we'll have a fresh author to talk about another topical issue around their book that we'll tackle. And don't forget also, don't forget to check out all of our resources online too at litfilmfest.com. Just give it a gander, please. Thank you all. Take care, chin up, hey, and have a good one. Bye.